Apple has had some obscure products and accessories over the years, but there may be none as widely circulated and yet so fast forgotten than the iPod Loop wrist strap that came with every single iPod Touch 5th generation when they launched in 2012. Using this small little silver nub that extends when pressed, the loop simply slides on and gives you extra security in holding the device, perhaps when taking photos, for example. This was one of the most useless and utterly pointless things Apple has ever made, and yet to be honest, I still kind of find it cool. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I have here a sealed 2-pack of the Apple iPod Touch Loop. That's what they called it, but it's just a wrist strap. I got this off of eBay. It was like 50 bucks, so this was quite the investment. It does say at the bottom 2012 for the copyright, so I don't know if it's actually that old or not. It'd be pretty cool if it was, but who knows. These would have been sold probably right up until the iPod Touch 6 came out, which was 2015. So as a quick aside here, it's been a month or two since I've bought the Apple Loop, and of course, in the time since I bought it for $50, Elite Obsolete Electronics, he sells iPods, great store, totally recommend it, but I mentioned to him that I bought one of these, and he was like, oh yeah, I should get some of those. So he buys a whole bunch, and now is selling them brand new for $13 each. So that's great, but yeah, if you want an Apple Loop, that's the place to buy them. But regardless, we're gonna be opening this thing up for the first time, and talking about why Apple even made these in the first place, and of course, why nobody cared. So here we've got the box, or the container, or the packaging, or whatever you want to call it. It's very plasticky, very old Apple. They don't really use plastic packaging too much anymore, but this is nice because it shows the two loops that we have here on full display. Of course, we've got a white one and a red one. Again, this was $50 off of eBay, and this is fully brand new, sealed, never been opened. On the back is simply a little diagram of the iPod in case you didn't know what this was for. Initially, iPods did come with the loops, but the 16GB models did not when those came out, so it makes sense somebody might buy something like this, or maybe you just wanted a different color to accessorize, and we do have two here. So if we go ahead and start opening up this flap of the plastic on the bottom, we've got that orange arrow sticker that needs to be pulled off, very similar to when we unboxed that iPhone 5C. But then we can lift up the plastic tab, reach into the container. There's just kind of this nice cardboard piece holding the loops in place, and we can just slide that out. Very nice, very typical, easy Apple experience. And there are the loops there. You can see them up close, and you can see how nice they look, the texture. You can just imagine feeling that. They do feel very premium. If we turn over the paper piece here, we see instructions on how to put the loop onto the iPod. But back to the wrist straps. To pull them off the cardboard, all we have to do is pull out where those little plastic tabs are. Most of them popped out, but the top one came with the loop, and that was easy enough to deal with. And here is at least the white Apple loop. You can see how simple it is. It's very straightforward, as you would think. It's just a wrist strap after all. And there's the little slider, so you can adjust the size to fit your wrist better. Before we get the red one out, let's go ahead and slide this onto the iPod. So we just hit the little button, and then we go ahead and struggle to get this on. I kind of flopped at first there, but there we go. You can see there was that little hole in the loop, and that's what sits around the little nub and keeps it nice and tight and secure. As is typical for Apple, it fits absolutely perfectly. You don't push the button afterwards, it just sits there. And we can go ahead and take out the red loop. It's the exact same process. And we can try that one out as well. It also works, which is insane. And then we can even try to stick two of them on at once. I just had to try this. It does not work. It is too tight, unfortunately. I could have probably really tried, but I didn't want to like damage anything. I did pay 50 bucks for these. So there we go. We have two Apple loops with our space gray iPod Touch 5th generation. The future is now. Now, how do these hold the iPod? Well, pretty well. Just dangling it from the air. It's secure. It's not going to slip off somehow. These are nice. As far as wrist straps go for any device I've ever used, you don't have to fumble with anything like you would with a digital camera. Slide it on, slide it off. As straightforward as it gets. But at the same time, this is an iPod. Why on earth do we need a wrist strap? Well, as you might expect, there are of course reasons, or at least there are reasons that Apple thought you might want a wrist strap. For one thing, they were really pushing the camera quality of their new iPod Touch 5th generation back in 2012. It had a 5-megapixel camera. As far as iPods went, it was by and far the best camera that the line had ever seen. Much better than the 4th generation, and definitely better than that iPod Nano camera. That was also a thing. So I guess they thought that maybe people would like to have the extra security to carry this around like a digital camera. Perhaps because the iPod was so darn light and so thin, they thought it would be really easy to drop. It is extremely compact, and if that was something you were concerned about, with it falling out of your hand somehow, then I guess this wrist strap would help. I'm sure they at least somewhat had kids in mind. iPod Touches around 2012 are really being seen as devices for someone who wasn't ready for a phone yet. Children can be stupid and drop things, so a wrist strap would ensure that doesn't happen. Maybe in intense gaming sessions, that's something they also push launched with this, the power. The iPod 5 had the A5 chipset, the same one in the 2011 iPhone 4S, and for the time, it was really technically impressive, especially because it was so small. I don't think this would have played into Apple's thinking, but this was actually a larger device than usual as well. It had that 4-inch display, and this was the first time an iPod had that. In fact, this came out at the same time as the iPhone 5, which was the first iPhone to have a bigger display. Maybe they thought that because it's a little bit bigger, it might be a little bit more awkward to hold. Mind you, it's still very small, especially in today's context, but hey, I'm kind of grasping at straws here, okay? The truth is, the loop didn't make a whole lot of sense even from the get-go. I feel like there must have been some other way Apple could have made an accessory for this without having something built onto the iPod itself. The iPod here is designed with the loop in mind. This is a feature. How many times does Apple put something on a device specifically for something like this? They never do. I can't think of another case in recent Apple history, at least, where they've done this. This button is specifically here for this one accessory, and that's all it does. The only thing somewhat close to this that I can think of might be the recent addition of MagSafe with the iPhone 12 line, where you have a magnetic circle around the wireless charging, allowing for accessories made to be compatible to stick on just like magic. However, this was done without any change in the actual physical design, and so while it might be a change purely for Apple accessories, it's still not nearly at the same level as the iPod loop button. Again, having a physical design element on the outside purely for an accessory and not a number of accessories like MagSafe, and one that originally came with the iPod, you didn't even have to buy it separately. This says that Apple's design team must have really believed the Apple Loop would have been a widely used and coveted feature, and it takes up space on a device that's about as compact as it gets already. You do have those smart connectors on iPad, but like MagSafe, they don't really change the physical design even if they are actually visible. There may be some more examples here and there of similar things, but when it comes to Apple's devices within the past decade, the iPod Touch 5 stands alone as an extremely unique device in this regard. If we do go back a bit further, however, we find that not only had something similar been done before, but in fact, on iPods at least, even much more invasive design elements have existed. The first obvious ones are the clips on the mini iPod Shuffles and Nanos over the years, to the point that the 6th generation iPod Nano had its clip used as a way to attach a wrist strap and essentially turn the device into the first ever Apple Watch. But these clips weren't originally made for a wrist strap. It wasn't for a specific accessory. It was convenient, right? You could clip your iPod to your shirt or your pants or wherever while you were jogging or simply moving around and didn't want it in your pocket. Plus, these were the days of wired headphones, meaning you could put the device in a position that would have the cord be less obtrusive. The best parallel I can think of would be with the first iPod Shuffle, which actually had something even crazier when it came to changing the design. You might recognize the device best as this, looking kind of like an Apple TV remote, but there were actually two caps included. The one here, and then the second one with a lanyard attachment. The lanyard cap allows you to put this around your neck, giving you much more maneuverability while carrying the device, as well as a lot less potential for entanglement with your earbud wires. The caps of course just pop off, and this reveals the USB underneath, which can be plugged in directly to the computer for iTunes synchronization. It was a really cool design element, albeit a flawed one. The cap wasn't actually held to the iPod itself in any fashion besides it clicked on. It wasn't gonna fall off, but it would have been extremely easy to lose the cap. And if you look up used first-gen shuffles on eBay, a good portion of them either don't have the lanyard cap or don't even have the normal cap altogether. Even so, it was a cool idea, and I do believe Apple did sell replacements for these if you lost yours. Oh yeah, last little thing is that there's actually a loop for the Siri remote for Apple TV. It plugs into the bottom of the TV remote, and it's just a strap for your wrist. Mind you, these remotes do have motion sensors, kind of like a Wiimote, so something like this could make sense if you were doing that a whole lot. These are for the older remotes, not the newer ones. It's obscure, but it is a thing. I'm pretty much done with this tangent, but I just wanted to make it clear how rare it is for Apple to do something like this. They don't make any sort of design decision unless they're confident and steadfast in their position on it. In my entire life, I've seen a lot of iPod Touch 5th generations. This came out while I was in middle school, so they were very popular. I do not remember ever seeing one person use an Apple Loop. Maybe it happened, but I kind of doubt it. The point is, people didn't need these. Most people probably would have used a case anyways, and that would either block that or make it extremely inconvenient. Plus, a case would add more grip, and thus it would be easier to hold on to. But all in all though, Apple was pushing that camera, and the iPod even had quite a bit of storage to go with it, starting at 32 gigabytes. However, Apple in 2013 would release probably the strangest iPod Touch they've ever done, and that's this one here, which was the same thing except 16 gigs. It only came in silver with a black front and had no rear camera, as well as, you guessed it, no Apple Loop button. This was was the budget version, so I suppose it kind of makes sense that you wouldn't have the Apple Loop, but the no camera thing is really weird. When eventually they did start making 16GB iPod Touches that came in all the regular colors and actually had back cameras, they still had the loop button, but they did not come with the Apple Loop anymore, so you would have to buy one separately. Apple would officially do away with the loop in 2015 when the 6th generation iPod Touch would replace the 5th gen, looking absolutely identical except for a slightly different color palette and of course no loop button. Finally, clean seamless corners of colored aluminum. Although the Apple Loop's time was short and served as an extremely unremarkable blot on the history of Apple accessories, it is still one of their most popular of all time in terms of units shipped. By default, as it originally came with the device, but even so. Apple themselves didn't seem too excited talking about it in the keynote, so perhaps there was some awareness that it really wasn't going to be useful, but they still chose to design the iPod around this feature, so who really knows. Regardless, I find it pretty interesting, and in the very least, it was a pretty nostalgic trip to look back at it. And so with that, I think I'm right about done here. Obviously, the Apple iPod Touch Loop was a pretty pointless product, but hey, good on Apple for trying something new. It's somewhat understandable with iPod being in such a weird place around 2012. You also had the transition from the Steve Jobs era into the Tim Cook one. A lot of things were kind of being tested, so to speak, and regardless, at least it made for a hopefully decent video. And if you thought so, maybe hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content just like this. Did any of you actually ever have a loop or even use one? Let me know in the comments below. I feel like people who did have them just left them in the box and never did anything with them, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people were using them, so let me know. Go follow me on Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok if you'd like to, and we do have a Discord channel. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.